Hello guys, today I'm going to take you behind the scenes of my brand new workshop to show you how I built this luthiers tool wall you can see behind me. Now I really struggle to organise myself and I am often referred to by my friends as a squirrel. You know what I mean, you'll pick your wallet out of your pocket and there'll be like 3 different jobbers in there. So with this new workshop, I made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to act like a squirrel anymore. I made this tool wall to be a luthier's tool wall and I'm going to talk you through some of the tools that are on there throughout this video, but you can of course adapt it to any kind of form of woodworking you want. It's actually extra easy because I've chosen to make a French cleat style tool wall. Very tricky to say that quickly. This system really does have an inherent element of flexibility. And to explain that, I'm going to take you through exactly what a French cleat wall is. Now a French cleat is essentially a piece of wood cut to an angle of 45 degrees. We'll call this the hanger. There is a corresponding piece of wood, we'll call that the accessory, which is also cut at 45 degrees. So the hanger and the accessory can slot into each other to form a 90-degree angle. This is a really simple, really strong and really effective joint. And as I said, there is a lot of flexibility with this joint because you can just hook it on, slide it around. If you feel like there are tools which you're reaching too high for, you can just pop them down, that's fine. It will probably take you a month or 2 to get used to your tool wall and find out what needs to be where, and that is where the French cleat tool wall is a perfect choice, especially if you're like me and you change your mind every 2 seconds. I started the project by chopping my material. I needed to work within the restraints of my table saw and also me being quite small. I got to lift this thing onto the wall on my own, so I settled for as big as I could, and I can always add another panel to it if I have to. While I was at it, I also cut the cleats to 45 degrees each. Then came the challenge of mounting it onto the breeze blocks wall, so I just used some wall plugs and then just used my router table as a little extra support because this wood is quite heavy. I used 2 2x4s as little spacers to ensure that all of the cleats were even without having to measure them up. I've never had the space in a workshop of my own to build stuff like this properly, and the nail gun was definitely a saving grace in the matter. And then I moved on to creating the accessories. Now, as I say, I have a lot of specialist tools for luthiery, and I'm often digging around in drawers or whatever to try and find the exact tools that I need for an exact job. So I really wanted to crack down on that. These are my fretwork tools. You can see a fret cutter there, which I use for just cutting the edge of frets, and then the tang nipper, which removes the underside of the fret before it goes into the fretboard. I never feel comfortable when they're just kicking around in a drawer. I'd like to have them somewhere neat, so this is the perfect setup for them. Next up, I'm going to take care of my chisels, which are eternally rolling around a drawer of mine. Although I covered the drawer in chamois leather, I just don't feel comfortable having them there anymore. They help me with a wide range of jobs, of course, and if they're in a drawer, they're going to be getting blunt somehow. This wall will ensure that the ends of the chisels are nicely floating in midair, retaining their sharpness and not potentially hitting the back of a drawer. I marked out the centre line and then did some even spacing with different sized Forstner bits to make sure there is a snug fit on all of my various handles. A lot of my chisels are from Stu Mac, a couple are from Workshop Heaven. They're all my babies and I wanted to give them a good home. I also spruced up their house a little bit by popping a little bevel on there so I don't catch myself unawares on a sharp corner. The next thing to do was mount my magnetic strip. Now this is really good for miscellaneous tools such as squares or calipers, things that I just need to grab a bit quicker than anything else. This magnetic strip is great for that. Next up, the magnetic tool wall was getting filled. I wanted it to be the centerpiece because it holds my most important tools like my calipers, for example, which I use all the time, and I just kind of want to be able to pick them up and put them back without thinking about it. I want to have them at the center of my vision when I approach my tool wall. There are so many different types of rulers and radius bars and that kind of thing in luthiery that I do feel like those things have to have their own place. Like I've got my center line ruler and I've got my fretboard radiusing jig and to be in their own place so I know exactly where they are. But I kind of like how the calipers are easily removable and easily put backable. Next, it was time to build a little shelf for my number 7 Lie-Nielsen plane. Aesthetically, I think planes are works of art, so having them on display is really important to me. It's also the most practical way to have them. I've recently been getting into the habit of putting them down on their side after everyone on the internet shouted at me for not doing it. So I popped some chamois leather on the back of the bracket so that when I lay the plane down, I knew the blade was going to be riding against some really soft leather as opposed to a hard piece of wood. I love getting sentimental about my planes as well. I just use them every single day and I know they're going to last me forever until I choose to pass them on to somebody else. I see them as my heirloom tools and subsequently I want to give myself the best chance of looking after them. So I'm building another shelf for my number 5 now, which I probably use more than the number 7. Honestly, it's in my hand constantly, and again, I do the exact same thing here. Put a layer of chamois leather on the back of it so that I know it's going to be really beautifully protected. Since I was giving so much love to my big planes, I thought my little planes could have some love as well, so I gave them the exact same treatment, made them both a little shelf. Again, with the chamois leather, these ones aren't very heavy, so I'm happy to leave those sitting on their face, and I've got some chamois leather under them just in case anyway. After I put my drill up, I kept looking back at the 2 planes sitting there on the left, and I felt really bad that they had to share a shelf, and I didn't want them to think that I was treating them any differently just because they're smaller. So I gave the smallest one their own shelf, and just a bit of appreciation for this little plane. It's so cute, and it's so good at its job. So I felt a bit guilty for making it share with its brother when the other 2 didn't have to. Anyway, I also had some more chisels lying around, so I just made a little chisel holder for that as well. Same deal with the screwdrivers. It's quite a good little way of hanging things without taking up too much space. Anyway, a little birdie in my head was telling me that it was time to get into the most important part of the tool. So I got cracking on the iconic Le Trône de l'Observatoire de Canade, or the Duck Observatory throne. However, I could tell quickly that it wasn't good enough for somebody, and so we tried a couple different things and eventually figured that the only place that was going to work was King of the Castle. Anyway, all of my baby tools had a home, and it was looking pretty beautiful if I say so myself. I made the decision to screw some of the cleats in because I knew they weren't going to change location, and I'm a very clumsy human. It's amazing what I can knock, even if it's secured with a French cleat, but you don't have to do that. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this project. I've got all the links to everything I mentioned in the video below, along with some of the tools that I've talked about. I can't wait to show you this new workshop of mine in more of its actual glory because it is an amazing space, and I'm squirreling away hard in the other sense, to provide a really organised and a really peaceful space for me to make beautiful guitars in. If you have anything that you particularly like to see, as always, drop it in the comments. If you're a subscriber, you might have seen the video I did about building a go-bar deck, which is an ancient Chinese clamping deck that facilitates the clamping of complex radiuses and other guitar making things, but also for a bunch of other random industries like boat building and car building. So please do check that out because it nearly broke my back doing it. See you really soon for another video, and bye!